So a few weeks back, I came down with the flu. And I was in bed for a few days and wondering how to manage my mind so that I could keep my mind uplifted and focused on virtue. I remember that I had seen a copy of the Book of Joy by His Holiness and the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu in the library here. So I got out of bed, walked to the library, checked out the book, and I went back to bed. So as soon as I looked at the book, I knew that I had done the right thing. I mean, look at this cover. So it just automatically brings a smile to the face, just looking at the faces of these beloved and respected spiritual leaders. And they're looking at each other and they're smiling, and you can see their gentleness and kindness. And so I just laid in bed looking at the cover for a few minutes, just letting all that in. I didn't have to read the book. I just had to look at the faces and and get an automatic transmission. um, so after looking at it for a while, I started to read the book, and it was obvious to me as soon as I started reading it that the great respect, admiration, and love that these two holy beings have for each other. I mean, it was just so palpable in the way that they related, talked with each other, encouraged each other, and even when they did not agree with each other. So in the book, they joked with each other, laughed with each other, supported each other, and shared their wisdom and their difficult moments. And in this process, I think they provided an example for all of us on how to interact with one another. I'm going to read a quote from Archbishop Tutu, which I think really encapsulates the spirit of the book. It says, "Yes, the Dalai Lama and I tease each other, but it is a statement of trust in this relationship. It is an indication that there is enough of a reservoir of goodwill." I thought, how beautiful. They trust each other, they know each other, and they know that it's okay to share in the laughter, to share in the difficulties, to share their insights. It's a beautiful way to frame their relationship. When they had a similar insight, they expressed their agreement and expanded upon it, amplifying it and building upon each other's wisdom in a very synergistic way. When they voiced different approaches, they did so with respect, camaraderie, and a loving understanding of the other's perspective. They both described joy as deriving from a genuine concern about the happiness of others rather than our own. Basically, they said, we open the door to joy when we get out of our self-centered ways and focus on the needs of others. It was clear from their perspective that joy takes into account our interdependent nature and recognizes that we are impacted by the other's happiness or unhappiness. They outlined 8 pillars of joy, which I've written here, which are perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, and generosity. So perspective is looking at the situation from different angles, and this is something that we do in Buddhism, particularly when we're trying to analyze a difficult topic such as emptiness. We try to look at it from different angles to really distill the essence. And so this is something that they bring to our development of choice. When you look at a situation, don't just frame it from one point of view, but try to look at it from different points of view. His Holiness said in the book, "For every event in life, there are many different angles. When you look at the event from a wider perspective, your sense of worry and anxiety reduces and you have greater joy." In terms of humility, they say that thinking of ourselves as something special keeps us isolated. So the Archbishop noted that sometimes we confuse humility with timidity. He explained that these two are very different. We can allow ourselves to celebrate the gifts of others without denying our own gifts. And so in essence, not denying the qualities of others while still holding to our own self of confidence. So not going to the extreme of arrogance, not going to the extreme of self-denial, self uh, doubt, but rather built on confidence that acknowledges others' good qualities as well as our own. His Holiness shares a story about an interfaith meeting in New Delhi where there was a lot of different spiritual leaders gather. And there was a spiritual leader sitting next to him who was, and His Holiness described it as very rigid with a scowling face. And this spiritual leader said that his seat should be higher than the others. And so I guess he was not very happy because he was at the same level. So the organizers had to put bricks under the legs of the chair to raise it up so that he could be higher. And so, needless to say, that is not an example of humility. His Holiness joked about, he kept on thinking as the event was going on, if what would happen if one of the bricks were to just fall away or move in some way, and what would happen to this leader. So that brings us to sense of humor. So looking at a situation with a sense of humor, learning to laugh at ourselves and our self-centered ways. So humor can be very healing, the way that is being described in this book. And we can learn to use it as a tool, not as a way to make fun of others, to hurt, criticize, or disparage them, but rather as a way to look lightly upon our own frailties and difficulties. As explained by Archbishop Tutu, he said this kind of humor does not belittle either us or the other, but rather allows us to recognize and laugh at our shared humanity, our shared vulnerabilities, and our shared frailties. The next pillar is acceptance. It is the opposite of resignation and defeat. We can accept a situation while at the same time working constructively to change it. As our Bishop Tutu expressed, the question is not how we escape our situation, but rather how can we transform it into something that is positive and meaningful. His Holiness added that when we see people doing harmful actions, the compassionate thing to do is to try to stop them because they're harming themselves as well as others. There are some wonderful stories here when we talk about forgiveness, and I'm going to read some because I don't think I could do them justice otherwise. And I don't know about you, but when I read this, I was brought to tears. These stories stemmed from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, as we're trying to heal after the apartheid era. And so the, Archbishop Tutu is recounting how in one of these meetings, a group of mothers came who had witnessed their sons being killed and their bodies dragged on television. And they had seen the face of those who did this to their sons. And so they were confronting the perpetrators at this particular commission. And of course, the mothers were struggling with their feelings and how to approach this. But in this, I'm going to read now. In this group of mothers, the one who was speaking on their behalf got up and went across the room to this guy who had been responsible for the killing of their sons and embraced him and said, "My child." They embraced him as his own or her own. Recently, Archbishop Tutu continues, recently I got a message about a white woman named Beth, who was badly maimed in a bomb attack by one of the liberation movements. This is still about the South Africa experience. And still had shrapnel in her body. Many of her friends were killed and many were also maimed. She had to be helped by her children to eat, to bathe, etc. And Beth said, about the perpetrator, I forgive him, and I hope he forgives me. Then the Archbishop told a story about a classmate, Amy Beale, who had gone down to South Africa after graduating from university to try to help. She was brutally killed while dropping off one of her friends in a township. Her parents came all the way from California to South Africa to support the granting of amnesty to the perpetrators who have been sentenced to heavy terms of imprisonment. They said, "We want to be part of the process of healing in South Africa. We are sure that our daughter would support us in saying that we want amnesty to be granted to the murderers." And more than this, they set up a foundation in their daughter's name and employed these men who had murdered their daughter in the project to help the people of that township. So when we talk about forgiveness, these are some stories that we can bring to mind to inspire us in what we can do when we look at a situation from a different point of view. In terms of compassion, His Holiness explained that human beings are social animals. Our survival depends on others. Therefore, if you want a happy life with fewer problems, you have to develop a serious concern for the well-being of others. Psychologist Paul Gilbert was quoted in the book as saying, "Compassion is one of the most difficult and courageous of all our motivations, but it's also the most healing and elevating." Lastly, generosity. And there are many instances, I'm sure, where we've wondered whether or not we should be generous, whether or not we have enough to share with others, whether or not being generous is going to lead to our own well-being. So there's a story here about a millionaire who had pledged to donate a good chunk of his money to charity. But just as he was trying to do that, the market turned and he lost most of his money. The only thing he had left was the money that he had pledged to give to charity. He thought about it and he thought about it, and in the end, he decided that he was going to give his every last penny to the charity as he had provided it. And in doing that, he realized the money is not the happiness. Happiness is in the act of giving. So I thought that that was also very inspiring to share. And as my last comments, I want to say that the book also has a very generous section on practices to develop joy, meditations, and so forth, which I will truly encourage you to look at. And for the back cover, there is a wonderful picture of His Holiness and Archbishop Tutu dancing. So from cover to cover, there's a lot of joy in this book. And I highly recommend it. Don't just be content with hearing the tidbits I've just described, but actually go into it and read it. And I want to leave you with the last few morsels of wisdom that are in this book. And they say, "Adversity, illness, and death are real and inevitable. We choose whether to add to these unavoidable facts of life with the suffering we create in our own minds and hearts. This is the chosen suffering. The more we make a different choice to heal our own suffering, the more we can turn to others and help to address their suffering with the laughter-filled, tear-stained eyes of the heart. And the more we turn away from our self-regard to wipe the tears from the eyes of another, the more, incredibly, we are able to bear, to heal, and to transcend our own suffering. This was the true secret to joy." Gratitude. Did I miss that? Yes. Thank you for reminding me. I totally went to skip that one over. So this chapter is so rich, especially because His Holiness and Archbishop Tutu both have faced great difficulties in their life, yet they still retain a generous and grateful heart and attitude towards life. There is a quote in this book which I think encapsulates the spirit of gratitude, and is from David Steindl Rast. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's a Benedictine monk, and he says, "It is not happiness that makes us grateful. It is gratefulness that makes us happy. Every moment is a gift. There is no certainty you will have another moment. So, with all of the opportunities that this moment contains, let's take advantage of it." I thought that was a beautiful quote too. Thank you.